Hello, everybody. Very welcome to this special version of Happy Hour. As we do not have just one expert, but we have more experts, these experts by experience. We'll have a panel discussion with our PhD students. And I'll introduce them to you. So we have Tom from Drimmelen from actually where I'm working also in Leiden. And Nina Schwarzbach from University of Groningen. Cristian Mesquida from, I need to glance at my notes for that, Eindhoven University of Technology is the official name. And Iris Lechner from Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam. We have a panel discussion on experiences with research integrity as a student. Let's see. And each of the format is that each of you will pitch your research with and the link also with research integrity, and then we'll have a panel discussion. And also we have a referee today, is Lodewijk Pet, who is doing kind of a happy hour also in Leiden University. And we're happy that he will serve as a referee, and he is also a PhD student himself. So let's start with the pitch of each of you of your research project. Let me invite the person who is farthest away is now joining from Japan, actually. Nina.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm currently for a research project in Japan. That's very exciting. So it's late here. Yeah, so my name is Nina. I'm a fourth-year PhD student in Groningen. My PhD project is about how science and practice work together in psychotherapy and also how they don't work together. So I'm looking at the gap between research and practice. And I already noticed quite in the beginning that there's a lot of literature talking about how practice is not applying science. So I wanted to look more about what is science actually doing to make research applicable, and how does the way that research is conducted actually contribute to the gap between science and practice. And the link to integrity, I guess, is that there's sometimes a discrepancy between what research or like what the system expects research to look like and what is, for example, and what practice relevant research looks like. So that's my way to look at it.
Thank you, Nina. And then Iris from Spain today.
Yeah, thanks. And I apologize in advance because I misunderstood or some miscommunication happened. So Chris, Tom, and I collaborated to make a small PowerPoint overview of our projects. And sorry, Nina, that I didn't include you in this. So I'm also a PhD candidate at Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam. And my research interests are in co-creation methods, epistemology, research integrity, and philosophy of higher education. So it's quite a range of research interests. And I research a question that's related to research integrity, but it's not the only thing I look at. So I research the question, what is a good university, using co-creation methods and using epistemology or knowledge theory. But that there is a strong link with research integrity, of course, because we think that research integrity is vital to what a good university is, next to, for example, what good education is or how research and education can benefit society. But as it comes to research integrity, I've been in the past or still am involved in various projects, for example, in the Embassy of Good Science, which is a project that made guidelines for institutions, Virtue, which is developed the training, and I'm involved in an NRIN working group on research integrity and ethics, specifically in relation to the social sciences and humanities, which is also what some of my current interest is in. How can we make the field more geared or tailored to meet the needs of these other fields than biomedical sciences. Can I just continue and pass it over to Tom?
Definitely you can. So my name is Tom van Drimmelen. I'm a PhD candidate at the LUMC, the Leiden University Medical Center, and a postdoctoral researcher at the CWTS, the Center for Science and Technology Studies, both in Leiden. I noted as my research interests, obviously it's a bit of a snapshot, but just methodology in general, epistemology, but more specifically research practice, how research is done as opposed to how it should be done, perhaps. Diversity, and this is not necessarily in the sense of physical diversity, but also epistemic diversity in general. And of course, researcher discretion. Discretion is what my PhD project was really focusing on. And discretion, it might seem as a bit of a difficult word, but I think it's a concept that's tacitly known, at least by all researchers. It goes by many names. I've seen people talking about research flexibility, researcher latitude, researcher initiative, researcher degrees of freedom. And in my view, they all refer to the same thing, which is the researcher's influence on the execution and the outcomes of the research project. Which is what we wanted to study. And there's many ways to do so. You can ask people in interviews, you can ask them in surveys, but what we really wanted to do was try to observe these decisions as they were taking place. So to do so, I spent 6 months at 2 different research groups, 12 months of fieldwork, ethnographic fieldwork in total. Just to look at how researcher discretion, how researcher decisions are made. We currently have 2 article manuscripts under review. The first one concerns the emergence of researcher discretion, which we found occurred when plans are either over-determined or under-determined. And the second one is about the content of the researcher discretion. So we tried to figure out what components, which components these decisions exist, and we found that they're either based on moral ambiguity, in which it's uncertain what is the good thing to do, or just simply uncertainty in which some specific piece of information is missing. And we're still currently doing more analysis.
Thank you, Tom. And Cristian, look forward to hear your pitch.
So yeah, hi, my name is Cristian. First of all, thank you so much for having me, and I'm very looking forward to having this panel discussion with all of you. I'm sure that it will be very interesting, and many interesting discussions will come up. So yeah, I'm a 4th year PhD student here at Eindhoven University of Technology. My PhD project is part of a bigger replication project in Ireland at Technological University Dublin. And in this big project, there are 2 arms. One arm tries to conduct direct replications in the lab, just as it was done in psychology or cancer biology a few years ago. And then the other arm, the one that I'm in charge, instead of trying to replicate studies in the lab, is trying to assess the replicability of the field by investigating the factors that may decrease the replicability, such as the so-called troubling trio, which are studies with low power to detect the effect size of interest. Another one could be publication bias, or the preference of researchers, reviewers, and journals to publish studies that confirm the hypothesis tested. And then the other one is the presence of questionable researcher practices, such as p-hacking. And then also as part of my PhD, I'm interested in the reproducibility, or to be a little bit more specific, the computational reproducibility of meta-analysis published in the sports and exercise research field. Yes.
Thank you, Christian. Interesting to see that there is a center specifically for replication in sports science. I hand over to Lodewijk, actually, to moderate the discussion.
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you for your introduction, all panelists. Very short. I'm Lodewijk Bet. I'm a PhD candidate at LUMC, and my topic is quality and integrity of research, biomedical research. So that's why I'm also asked to be the referee here. I will start this panel discussion. We've prepared a few questions and we will discuss them openly with the panel. And at the end, the last 20 minutes, we will involve you as the audience. You can also join. And I would like to start this panel discussion with something that I find interesting myself, because I ask beginning PhD students about the Netherlands Code of Conduct and how they view this. And one thing that I find particular is that, well, their opinions change also depending on where they are in the PhD process. So my question for you is if you can discuss a specific instance where your attitude towards a particular questionable research practice over the course of your PhD changed, and what was it that triggered this evolution. And I think we can best start with Tom. Well, not best, but I think we should start with Tom, because you are very close within scientific decision making. So I thought maybe you have some personal experience you can share.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was thinking about this question a little bit differently before, but indeed, one of my personal, I think, from what I've seen and what is kind of expectable, but is, I would say, nonetheless interesting, is that if you look at research practice for 12 months, then you're gonna find gray areas, things in which something that is, if simply viewed from the outside, you could easily say that something is questionable or even plainly bad. But there might be other factors that are going in. I think the main thing I think that occurred most often is simply, I'd say, maybe a problem of efficiency, in the sense that either you can do something good or you can do it, and sometimes you're going to have to be satisfied with simply doing it, and then obviously you're responsible for discussing the defects of what happened. But I think quite often simply the good, so the ideal way of doing research, was simply unattainable by lack of time, lack of resources, and then researchers need to figure out a way in which to still produce something close to what they had hoped to produce. So you can make the argument that as long as you just disclose what you did, it's not questionable. But I think that I don't know if everyone thinks about it like that. But so I think that was maybe the thing, at least that I saw most often, maybe not the most interesting.
Okay, the other panelists, what are your thoughts on this?
I can continue. I actually have, my notes are very similar to everything that Tom just said that I made, which is also because, like, my master is, I heard about epistemology in my PhD, not in my master, let's put it like that. I didn't really think about that there's different ways to conduct science, different ways of how knowledge can be produced, how to think about knowledge, and yeah, so I learned about this in my PhD, and I came from this, I want to produce objective knowledge that is like accurate and all these kind of things that you also, by the way, I Googled what is research integrity before this meeting again. And it says like things like being honest, being accurate, being efficient, and being objective. And I'm like, these are already things that don't work together. What you also just said about being efficient and like actually producing output doesn't go well together with other things that are said there. Yeah, and I think that over the course of my PhD, it became from this very ideal picture of how science should be, and especially this objectivity idea, to understanding what epistemology is, understanding my own assumptions, and also with that the boundaries become a bit blurry about what is good research, what is not good research. And yeah, and I think my like my own experience is just writing my first paper and noticing how much I needed to compromise my ideals.
Yeah, I think I can also add to that. So also as a student, maybe bachelor student, master student, you gradually learn more and you become more aware also of the constraints of an institution like academy or like the university. You work in unideal circumstances, like Tom and Nina said, and sometimes that leads to you as a researcher doing unideal things. So that's then the question, is that questionable or not? And you always try or strive for your best, of course. But a very, I think, so I hope we all agree here that, for example, something like pre-registration is a great way to explain what you're going to do, register it at a certain point in time, and then the idea would be you make amendments during the period where you do the research if you find out that the research, for example, goes differently than expected. But as a qualitative researcher, or more specifically as somebody who, so I've done research where actually I don't exactly know what I'm gonna research, because I leave the problem statement, for example, to the people I do research with. So in that case, it's very hard to make a good pre-registration, because you only know the people you're going to research with, and maybe the methods you're going to use, or the sort of the values you bring in that research. So that's, I think, yeah, there's sometimes a tension between wanting to do right by the standards that are there in the field of research integrity on the one hand, but also sort of have a democratic way of doing science, like in participatory research methods. And I think sometimes those collide. So then it is also about what is the best way of doing science, like Nina said, what epistemologies do you bring into your research?
Yeah, I really like I don't know who mentioned it, but someone said that a world or a new world open to us once you start diving into the PhD. And yeah, I can reflect on that. So looking back, I remember that as soon as I started the PhD, and you start reading about the topic that you will be investigating in the next few years. And especially I recall reading or starting to read for first time about philosophy of science and how to conduct power analysis, or what even it was statistical power, because I didn't even know what was that. In my experience, and especially in my field, I think that there is a lack of awareness and a lack of understanding about how important is a strong background in philosophy of science, but also in statistics. And I remember as a master student being in the lab and engaging in many of the practices that nowadays are known as questionable researcher practices. So such as, for instance, the first thing that I can think of is optional stopping. So is purely the practice of recruiting a few participants conducting a statistical test, and depending on the observed p-value, in the case that you are a frequentist, you go on recruiting more participants until you reach statistical significance. And as a master's student, I didn't know that. I thought that, you know, that was the way that things were done, and it was fine. But then as soon as I was in the PhD, and I remember reading the paper about undisclosed flexibility in data collection and analysis by Simons and colleagues, published in 2011. Yeah, a new world opened to me, and everything that I had done in the past as a master was it was doubtful. Yeah, I don't think it could be reliable at all. So yeah. It's been a long journey.
Well, thank you all for sharing. I think indeed, when you start your PhD, you're excited, you want to change the world, and then you're confronted with the reality. And also, as Joel mentioned, you learn along the way, and that changes your perspective. And well, while you're learning, of course, your supervisor and the institution should help you, should guide you. So it brings me to my second question, and maybe we start with Iris about the institution. So can you share an example where the institution supported, or well, the lack of support significantly impacted the way your research process, or the integrity of your research process?
The integrity of my research process might be a bit difficult, but I think so. At our faculty, that the fact that we have data managers or data champions, as they're called, it's quite new. And I guess before I met the data champion, I'm sure I didn't store all my data appropriately. So after a meeting with this data champion, they said, well, actually, you better do it like this, or make sure that your data is on a secure folder. So that's where institutional support really helped to structure at least the data management part of the process. But what I found really striking about the same data champion is that I had to set up a research collaboration with Malaysia. And for that, we needed to make sure that the GDPR regulations were right. So you cannot share data outside the EU unless there's a specific regulation in place. And here it was super helpful to collaborate with the people from our university to make sure that all the regulations would go right, because we had to share personal data with Malaysia. So here it was really, yeah, I didn't know that we even had to take this step. And then the data champion was like, yes, we have to do it like this and this and this. And then it worked out really well.
Any others who would like to share their experiences with the institutes?
I would like to jump in here, and perhaps it doesn't have to do with the fact how supportive my research institution was, because I started my PhD at TU Dublin in Ireland, and despite of all my excitement and energy to pursue this PhD, what it was a challenge, or the biggest challenge, it was the fact that stipends in Ireland are not, let's say, very, very big. So as a PhD student, I was struggling a little bit to make the ends meet by the end of the month. And I think that a PhD, it's supposed to be a challenge in itself, but that should be the only challenge. I mean, you as a PhD should not be struggling to make the ends meet and just make things even more complicated. And that's one of the reasons why I'm also here in the Netherlands now. I mean, the situation in the Netherlands when you are a PhD has nothing to do with the situation that you can encounter in other countries, such as such as in Ireland. And yeah, fortunately, I had an amazing second supervisor who, despite he doesn't like to be praised, he was supportive enough to offer me the chance to come to the Netherlands and continue the PhD, because at some point I was even hesitating to quit. So yeah, I think that's an example of how important it is to have a supporting environment as a PhD.
Or Nina, do you have anything to add to this?
I can.
Yeah, sorry, Nina, you go first.
I can share something. I generally think like pressure from like is not good for research integrity, like time pressure and these kind of things, which happens a lot, of course. However, I wanted to share a positive story as well, because I don't know, I experienced quite a lot of pressure recently, and I actually reached out to also like for institutional support. And like I must say there, like, okay, Iris mentioned something like data champions, they're called at your university, which is really funny, but also just like people that help you, like for example, with planning certain tasks, and these kind of people exist too, which, and in the end, if you have more time, then you also have more time to do your research as good as you can, I think, I hope. So I think that is also institutional support that definitely helps my process and indirectly also the integrity of my research.
Yeah, maybe just to add, like there are at most Dutch universities, I think we are very privileged in a way that there's so much support staff that you can reach out to. So if there's any Dutch PhD students listening or in similar circumstances, reach out to the people, reach out to librarians or to other people or to counselors if you think you need some help with some certain task, because they're always very willing. So that's also a lesson that I really learned along my PhD.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what Nina said reminded me of as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I was also like, when I reached out, I was like, really, why didn't I do this in my first or second year? This would have made my process and everything so much more smooth. But okay, yeah, lessons learned.
I think for me, even though the question was already quite broadly phrased, I need to interpret it a bit wider even to properly answer it, because I think what was most surprising for me was something that did not impact the integrity of my research project, where I was expecting that it should have been, and that was the ethical review at the Leiden University Medical Center, which in our case, because it was both a qualitative research project that they weren't really familiar with at the board, and a non-medical research project. Basically, first what we had to do is fit our entire project into a protocol that was clearly designed for medical research. And then ultimately what we got back was an assessment that the research was not subject to the what is it, the Medical Research Involving Human Subjects Act, the VMO. So we actually then went to a different institute still to ask for an ethical review of our research, because we didn't get it at all at the LUMC. So this is kind of like one of those things that, yeah, to do good research, you kind of need to acknowledge diversity. And I think I was quite disappointed with the state of it back then. Mind you, that was almost 5 years ago. Maybe Lodewijk, you know a bit more about how it's going currently. But Iris also mentioned data managers, and I think it's the same. I think we did. Looking back, I think we did and are doing a good job with data managing, but we didn't receive any guidance about it, nor did we really get any control about it. So that was a bit surprising, looking at it from now. And I think lastly, I think maybe I can add something that's maybe not institutionally, but more culturally, that I think that there's a bit of a strenuous relationship between the fact that a PhD project is supposed to be a learning project, but then we are kind of expected to contribute to the general academic literature right from the start. So like that's a bit of a weird situation for me.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing your experiences, and indeed what you're saying, Tom, is especially at LUMC, there's a big discussion. There's a bit of a tornado going through the LUMC about research integrity related issues, like the dean had to quit and all that kind of stuff. And my supervisor, Bob Sievink, is the head of the graduate school, and he's really trying to figure out, well, what is now the next step that we need to do. And one of the things that keeps coming back is the communication, also reaching out from both ends. So PhDs needing to know that there are people or institutions or people who can help them with their project, but also the other way around. How can the institution enable PhD students to get this help? Because, well, I think every PhD student will encounter some kind of stress at one moment, time pressure, and also that you have to contribute to science, but you're also learning. So that's a big, indeed, well, contradictory, which, well, it can be. So maybe now we can go to the next question, because it's about the personal life and work balance, which is closely related. And maybe Cristian can start with that, because you also mentioned that you were a very bad time that you were actually considering to quit. So can you discuss a specific challenge you had to face in balancing your personal life with your PhD, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I still think that I haven't gotten much better at it, but one of the first struggle was my time management. So first, I wouldn't pay that much attention to how much I was working, especially because I also was starting from a point where I had to learn a lot or I'm still learning, of course, but during the first month of the PhD, because my PhD was all about statistical power and publication bias and reproducibility. Those are things or concepts that I was not related at all. And I still remember when I had the first interview for the PhD, trying to learn about what was statistical power. So in that regard, once I started the PhD, I had so much to do because my starting point was so far behind that I had to put many hours. But I also think that that's a choice that it's a little bit up to you. So as long as it doesn't cost your mental health and you are fine working a little bit more than what you will expect, I think that's fine. But also I also had amazing, or of course I still do, supervisors who guide me through these, pointing me to the literature, to the things that I should be learning. And they kept reminding me that was a 4-year project. So you don't have to try to resolve everything during the first year. That's a step by step. Sometimes it will get easier. Sometimes it will get tougher, of course, just like life. But the most important thing is that you are surrounded by PhD or supervisors who are not only your supervisor but also mentors who guide you through this time, and that you enjoy the process, and in the end most of us will get to the end.
Anyone else of the panelists to share their experiences?
I think generally I was quite good at dividing the work-life balance, but I think that the two most significant challenges were very obviously the birth of two kids. And this is not something that I have overcome by any means, but rather something that I've completely and inevitably capitulated to that it would be different. And obviously I wouldn't have wanted it any other way, but it did severely restrict my flexibility of my workflow. And I think the PhD process kind of requires that flexibility, that in some times you just need to work more. I think it's also important that means that in other times you can work a bit less, that the pressure shouldn't be constant, but yeah, but with young children, it's kind of difficult to stay up at night working, or even working past 5 if you need to pick them up from daycare. Yeah, and if you can't work past 5 and you have a deadline, then something's got to give. But so I guess maybe this is more of a commentary on kind of the flexibility that maybe PhD work or academic work in general requires from us.
Yeah, so for me it's again a bit different. So when I started working, even like a year before I started my PhD, I was still living in a student room, very small, just a bed and a table. And then COVID hit, and of course everybody had to work from home. So I was working in the same place as where I was sleeping. And I found out during that period, for me, space is very important. So for me, I really need, like, if I walk through to a specific space, like a work desk, then now it's work time. And if I walk away from that space, then okay, now it's time to actually do something different. And fortunately, right now, in the philosophy department, we have a PhD room, and that's the space to work and to also, well, share any kind of challenge with my colleagues or just chit chat. But as soon as I leave then the VU building, then it's also trying to shut off the working mode and just go into relax mode. And this is of course different for everybody else, but for me, for example, I really enjoy sports, so I make sure I use time to sports, so sometimes in the morning and then go to work, like these kinds of things. And the last thing that I had to talk about with my supervisors at the beginning of work, or even with any kind of colleague, is I don't want to receive any kind of work-related stuff on my phone. So if people send me WhatsApp messages, I'm like, just send me an email. Like, I don't want to have any kind of work-related things going on at my phone. So that's something that's very personal, and this is different again for everybody. But setting the expectations for other people sometimes feels as a challenge, because you say, well, no, just don't reach out to me, even though it's convenient for you. So that kind of barrier, space and no phone context is important for me. So.
Great job in boundary setting. Yeah, I have one more thing to share, which is that, like, I actually also always thought that I had a quite good work-life balance. I don't think I do many evenings. I don't think I do many weekends. Like, only if it's really, really necessary, I do over hours. However, like, people always say that the work doesn't really, like, it's hard to let go of the work in the evenings. And I don't know, I thought it wasn't that bad, but at some point when I was not feeling so well and a bit overworked, somebody was pointing me to the fact that a lot of my hobbies are achievement related. So like, I was also doing a lot of sports, but also achievement related. And I was like trying to quantify many things in my life, which is, I don't know. And then I noticed that, like, okay, maybe the pressure that I get from work to achieve things actually does also reflect in my private life. And so, and then I noticed that I really, like, what relaxation is not always what I think relaxation is. Like, doing a lot of sports, like, it is important and it's so healthy, but like, I need to be careful that it doesn't become a number, for example, and that I also have periods where I actually relax, where I don't have any expectations to myself. So how to fill your private life is also something that you should think of.
Well, thank you all very much for everything that you shared. We have one more question, so I want to ask the panelists, and after this, I also want the others, all the contestants to join in the discussion. But my last question for you is about the research integrity community. What experience you have with this community and how it helped you in your PhD journey. So maybe we'll start with you, Nina.
You mean this community specifically?
Well, whatever your research integrity community is. Of course, we have the congresses, but maybe you have at your own facility, your own research integrity community.
I must say I am new to this crowd. However, I have, of course, people that I talk to about these kind of things, and it definitely helps my progress and my process and like staying sane.
Yeah, maybe I can share. So, for example, Tom and I met at my very first conference in Berlin. Maybe it's already 4 years ago. And there it was my first sort of really getting to know some of the people that work in the field of research integrity or meta science or open science, all these sort of related fields that sometimes come together at these big conferences. And what I find really nice is that meeting other researchers, specifically at that time, also really shapes a bond. So you do research in the same field, maybe you experience the same problems, you also know the same people. So it is nice to, yeah, if you go to a conference, get to know people, and then maybe if you go to another research integrity related conference, run into them again and catch up. And I just find that a really nice, they're very nice people, even the sort of the higher up professors and even the people from the European Commission, they're all very approachable, and you can always share your ideas with them, and then they give just great feedback or ideas that you can work on. So in my experience, it's a very nice group of people that I enjoy spending academic time with, so to say.
Well, Tom, do you share this same experience?
Completely different for me. No, no, exactly the same. It was my first conference as well, and indeed, it was so nice, especially for me because, like, I guess you have the same experience. We're at an institute where that's really not focused, at least, on our type of research, and also, in addition to that, not focused on my type of methods. So I was a bit isolated, so it was nice to meet other people. Also, one of the many unfortunate things of the COVID pandemic that also kind of put a stop to meeting people in those ways. But no, it's been very important for me, both professionally, intellectually, and personally, to get to know people in the field. I think what's interesting, because I think maybe I don't exactly know, but maybe I, more than the other panelists, are kind of at the crossroads between what I do definitely think are two different communities: the kind of meta research and integrity community on the one side, and the STS community on the other. And it's very lame to say, but I think a lot can be learned from each other, and quite often, not often, but sometimes I find that in both groups that people talk about the other group in quite a disparaging way, that they don't really take each other seriously, and that's kind of unfortunate, but maybe also just inevitable. But there's nice people on both sides. That's a very bad quote, but it does apply here.
So how do you propose that those should, and how do you propose that those different communities could meet or interact more? Because this is also a question I have with some of the communities. Or do you think it will not happen?
Well, I think there are some certain kind of intrinsic boundaries that that these communities are based on different convictions of how research is or how it should be. So I think in that way it might just be inevitable. But I do think, and to be fair, I also think that it might be better now than it was a couple of years ago, that I feel like now that people of these different communities are being invited to the other communities' conferences. I think that's very important. But other than that, I don't really think that there's anything we can do except for just asking people to be nice. And that's the start and maybe just the end, because I don't think you want to force people to do anything in this case either. Does that make sense, Lodewijk?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much,